Matthew Schaefer has said what he wants to see happen this season. We'll talk about how that impacts the New York Islanders. All this and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Wednesday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. So glad you could join us to talk a little Islanders hockey today. We have got a lot to discuss on today's show, including first overall pick in this year's draft, Matthew Schaefer, making his plans for this season known. We'll talk about how that impacts the Islanders. We'll answer some of your mailbag questions, and we will continue our player-by-player analysis of the Islanders as we take a deep dive into the scouting report on Victor Eklund, the second of the team's 3 first-round picks this year. Got to start, though, with Matthew Schaefer. And look, one big change that we are seeing, and I think it is a change for the better. Under Lou Lamoriello, players were not allowed to go on podcasts and do a lot of interviews. It was restricted, limited, off limits, depending on when and who you listen to. But overall, that is what the situation is. And yet, now, with Matthew Darche taking over, we're seeing more visibility of the Islanders players throughout this offseason, whether it's on podcasts, whether it's on social media, whatever the case may be. And it's definitely better for fans to have more access and more interaction with the players. And Matthew Schaefer basically made an appearance on TSN radio up in Canada on Monday of this week and basically explained what his goals are for this season. He said, I want to be in that opening night roster, and there's still some things I got to work on in the gym and on the ice. I think just getting stronger is the thing for me. So Schaefer is not going to any college program at this point. He wants to play on Long Island this year. And look, most first overall draft picks in the NHL do play in the NHL the year they're drafted. Not all. The last one that didn't wasn't that long ago. Owen Power, the defenseman who was drafted first overall by the Sabres in 2021, went back to the University of Michigan for one more season before turning pro in 2022. Again, Eric Johnson did it. Went back to the University of Minnesota before joining the Blues. So these are the last 2 players who were drafted first overall but did not start on Long Island or in the NHL. And look, as far as I'm concerned, I respect what Matthew Schaefer is trying to do. I think that he is goal-oriented, he is confident, and he knows also that hard work is part of the equation. And Here's what he had to say. He has been working out on the ice, skating with Mark Giordano, the former defenseman, and with Sean Monahan of the Blue Jackets. And he said being with NHL guys on and off the ice, doing things, it pushes you so hard. Honestly, I think that's what I need. And he also mentioned talking to Patrick Waugh, said I got to talk to him a bit, and he wants me to have that freedom where he doesn't want me to have pressure on me. He wants me to go out and be free and play my game. So, look, a lot of good news as far as his mindset is concerned. And the question really will become whether or not Schaefer, at this point in time, is ready to spend the entire season in the NHL. And as far as I'm concerned, I have no objection. I would have preferred, ideally, to have him spend 1 year in college to bulk up, to take an intermediate step between juniors and the NHL. He is still 17 right now. He won't turn 18 till the first week in September. So he is younger than almost any other first overall pick in a while. Yeah, we're talking weeks, months, whatever the case may be, but he's on the young side, okay? But the fact that he wants to play in the NHL, is willing to work hard to get there, I think that has to only be described as a positive. And remember, I don't necessarily expect an immediate impact. I do not necessarily think, he is going to be the Islanders' number one defenseman, probably not even a second pair defenseman. If he stays on the team all year, I could easily see him as a third pair defenseman and playing probably, at least to start, on the second power play unit, and eventually probably quarterbacking that second power play unit. So, even if he's only playing 13 to 15 minutes a game, it's okay. I do not expect him to step in and dominate from day one. And if in the event, remember, you could play a player in Schaefer's situation, can play up to 9 games with their NHL team, get sent back to juniors, and they will not burn the first year of their entry-level contract. So the way I look at it, if he has a solid training camp and he appears good enough to play with the big club at the start of the season, I start him there. I play him for the 9 games or up to the 9 games, and then I make my decision. Is he better off playing 25, 28, 30 minutes a game in Erie of the OHL, or is he better off playing against grown men in the NHL, but seeing less ice time and sort of making that adjustment? To me, the key is this: what is in the best long-term interests of Matthew Schaefer and the New York Islanders? I'm not concerned with his numbers this year. If he, scores 1 goal and has, 10, 12 points and is a minus 15 this year, I'm not going to lose sleep over that. This is a process where you look at his potential and you look at where he is now, and as an organization, the Islanders have to say, what is the best way to get him to maximize as much of that potential as possible? And however long that takes, and, we got to figure out the best way to do that. So if it means another year in juniors, if it means a year in the NHL with a limited role, if it means even, sitting him, let's say every 3rd game, plays 2, sits 1. to pace him. I'm okay with all of that as long as it serves the long-term interests of the New York Islanders and of Matthew Schaefer. This kid has said all the right things. He is mature. He is talented. He is confident. We'll see how he does playing against guys who are bigger, faster, and stronger than he is. But that's the challenge that Schaefer will face as a rookie, where he is not going to be the most talented guy on the ice at that moment. He may have the raw ability, but he's not a finished product. Whereas some guys who have maybe a little less talent will be bigger than him, stronger than him, and more mature, both physically and hockey-wise, than he is. How does he handle that situation? It's going to be interesting. I can't wait until preseason to see what he does and how he looks and how he is in training camp, because it's exciting. You don't get that first overall pick in the draft very often. It is great to see that the Islanders have it, and let's see how they handle this. One thing we need to see from this organization: draft and develop. They didn't do a great job at drafting, mainly because Lou traded away so many first-round picks, 4 in a row, and they had difficulty with development under the last regime. I want to see the development part of draft and develop improving starting now under Matthew Darsh. Let's see if it happens, and let's see how Matthew Schaefer does in 2025, 2026, regardless of where he plays. All right, more to get to on today's show. We'll dip into the mailbag for some of your mailbag questions and how that impacts the Islanders. We've got that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Gametime. And folks, have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. Well, that's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you could splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes this possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Gametime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On Major League Baseball, and that makes it easy to browse the app for exciting upcoming baseball games, Mets, Yankees, or any game. If you're tired of endlessly scrolling to find the best deal, Gametime's zone deals pick the best seats in your section for you. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So let's dip back into the mailbag. Always fun to answer your questions. And again, lockedonislanders@gmail.com is the way to ask and get your questions to us. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we talk about whatever's on your mind. We start with a two-part question from John in Smithtown. Basically, he says, I can only assume we didn't hear about Schaefer committing to a college or going back to the OHL, that he would go to the NHL unless he commits to a college late. If he does, I have no doubt that wherever he goes would take him in a heartbeat, even though he would apply late. And John, I think you're right. I think any college program within reason would certainly be eager to add the first overall pick in the NHL draft, even if they know, hey, the guy's only hanging around for 1 year. It's all good. the only question is, is that something that Matthew Schaefer wants to do? And so far, the answer appears to be no. Second part, what do you think about the Islanders signing Michael Higgins to a contract to try to get James Higgins not to sign with the Bruins and pull off a Lindros or Fox and try to sign with the Islanders? Well, that didn't happen, unfortunately. And, again, I think at this point, if you want to add James Higgins or Michael Higgins eventually, I think the time to do it is after their rookie contract is up. You could always make a trade. You could always, kind of find a way to add them down the line. But what you don't want to do at this point, in my mind, is give up a boatload of picks or prospects. If they can unload a player who they were already looking to move, I'll just throw out, for example, J.G. Pageau's name, who is somebody who most people agree by the trade deadline, they're going to move on from J.G. Pageau. Most likely. If, you could trade Pageau for Higgins today, and you probably can't, but if you could package players that you're already looking to move on from and then, get Higgins as part of that package, I'd be all in. I just do not realistically see it as something that I think is going to happen. So we'll see. But I would not count out, I will say this, I would not count out the possibility that at some point in his career, whether it's via free agency or a trade, that Higgins finds his way to Long Island. If that is his dream, the same way John Tavares found his way to Toronto, because that's what his childhood dream always was, it would not surprise me if Higgins finds his way to Long Island at some point in his career. And let's see when and if that could happen. But thank you so much for the two-part questions. And we have one more question now. This is from Joe in Vero Beach, Florida. Hi, Gil. Great podcast. What do you think of the Islanders making an end of training camp deal similar to the Johnny Boychuk and Nick Leddy deals, except in reverse, where the Islanders would say a deal a J.G. Pageau or an Anders Lee to a team possibly dealing with injuries to their forward in exchange for draft picks in next year's loaded draft or possibly prospects? Looking forward to your thoughts. Joe, thanks again for the question. I would love it. I absolutely would love it. Here's the deal. Two things come to mind with regard to your question. The first part is this. The Islanders have a surplus of NHL caliber players. They do not have a surplus right now of elite players. They don't have too many of those. But they have more than 12 forwards, probably more than 14 forwards who are at least NHL quality. And they have more than 7 defensemen who can play in the NHL right now. And that does give them the flexibility to A, replace a player who might get injured, and B, to trade one or two players, maybe one forward and one defenseman, maybe 2 forwards, whatever it is. And the second part of it, yeah, that opportunity exists. They have the room and they have the cap space. But here's the other part. You want to maximize the value of these assets, these players. So we know, for example, the 2 players you mentioned, J.G. Pageau, Anders Lee, they're both on expiring contracts. This is the last year of their deal. And in my mind, it makes sense that by the trade deadline, you trade both of those players, unless the Islanders surprise everybody and are fighting for, first place in the Metro this year. Okay. Let's even say the Islanders are in the playoff hunt, but not, like where they were 2 years ago, either barely in or barely out. Okay. The question is, do you get a better value for a guy like J.G. Pageau or Anders Lee before the season starts or at the trade deadline? I know a guy like Pageau will have probably a very high value at the trade deadline, and Lee would as well. But the scenario you laid out where, let's say another team suffers an injury to their forwards and they want to add J.G. Pageau or Anders Lee. And because this is a pretty good team, they're willing to offer you a really good package for one of or both of those players. That's where Matthew Darsh has a decision to make. When do I get the best return? And I think what you have to do is sort of place a value in your mind on what these players are worth, and then make sure that any trade proposal that you accept meets or exceeds that value. At the trade deadline, there's no more wiggle room. It's either you trade them, sign them to an extension, or lose them for nothing. But until the trade deadline, my attitude is, hey, you want J.G. Pageau? Blow me away. Make me an offer I can't refuse. And if a team does, I take it and I run with it. So that's sort of how I'm looking at it, Joe. Thank you so much for the question, Joe from Vero Beach. So again, lockedonislanders@gmail.com. That's the email to leave questions for the mailbag. We'll have another mailbag show next week. So please hit us up. Let us know what you're thinking. We have got more to get to on today's show. We continue our player-by-player deep dive into the Islanders 2025 draft class with first-round pick Victor Eklund. Plus, for our Islanders birthday of the day, we'll talk about a goalie who came to Long Island in the early 2010s after starring with the Sharks and spent 3 productive seasons on the island. We'll talk about his impact on the team. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. So we continue looking at the Islanders draft picks, and we have just 2 to go, including this one. Today, Victor Eklund, who the Islanders selected in the first round with the 16th overall pick. He is 5'11", 161 pounds. He's 18 years old, turns 19 in October. Moved up in Sweden to the big club, not playing in juniors. Scored 19 goals and 31 points in 42 games in Sweden. 2 goals, 7 points in 16 playoff games. And his brother, as you probably know, plays for the San Jose Sharks. And you sort of look at the scouting reports on Victor Eklund. He's got an average, he has an above average shot, above average puck skills. He is an above average skater, but he's great on his edges. He'll make those Matthew Barzal type moves to change direction. His hockey sense is average, but the thing that makes him stand out, according to scouts, is his compete level. He is a not so big guy who plays like a big guy. He is great on the forecheck. He goes to the net and creates chances. And many scouts view him as realistically a top line winger at some point in his career. The 2 players who scouts have compared him to, and again, this is probably his ceiling, but the 2 players that he's been compared to, the number 1 name I've heard, and I've heard it pretty often, is Travis Konechny. And then the other name is Seth Jarvis. I would take either one of those players in a heartbeat. And, here is a guy who is creative. He can fake a pass. He finds the lanes to make passes. And he realistically is just a guy who you can count on to play well. Now, obviously, the size thing is an issue. And he is going to be back in Sweden this year. He signed a contract already with the Islanders, which is fine. But overall, bottom line, he is going to need a little time to develop physically and mature. I get the feeling he will be in North America in a year from now. He will be getting ready to come over to training camp with the New York Islanders. Whether he makes the big club a year from now or not, well, that remains to be seen. And oh, by the way, little bit of information about Victor Eklund. He was invited to the World Junior Summer Showcase by the Swedes, but he declined to attend. Here's why. His agent, Todd Diamond, told the Hockey News, the main reason is we don't want to disrupt Victor's training program this summer. Victor was at the Summer Showcase last year. He was among the top forwards already at World Juniors last year and played against men all season. Working on his body is a better use of his time at this point. His team is moving up to the Swedish Elite League, and it will require a lot from Victor in addition to the demands he places on himself to be successful. So here is a guy who is dedicated to putting on that muscle that he needs to be successful at the next level. And I think he is going to be a really good addition to the Islanders down the road if he does continue to develop. The potential is there for him to be a first-line winger and certainly top six down the road. We'll see how he develops. Again, draft and develop, it's develop time. More drafts to come, but you got to work on that development. But I am very high on Victor Eklund's potential. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And, well, we are a couple of days early, but July 25th will be the 50th birthday of former Islanders goalie Evgeni Nabokov, the native of Kazakhstan, 9th round pick by the Sharks in 1994, came to North America and made his NHL debut with the Sharks in 1999-2000. Finally joined the Islanders in 2011-2012 and spent 3 seasons on the island. At first, he didn't want to come, finally came, did well in 3 years with the team, was with them from 2011-2012 through 2013-2014, finished his career briefly with the Lightning. But here's a guy with a career 2.44 goals against average, a .911 save percentage in 697 career games in the NHL. His best game as an Islander, how about March 23rd, 2014, a matinee at the Coliseum between the Islanders and the Blue Jackets. Sergei Bobrovsky and Evgeni Nabokov are the goalies. You expect a goaltending duel, and that's what we got. Cal Clutterbuck and Travis Hamonic scored goals in the first and second period, respectively, and the Islanders go on to beat the Blue Jackets 2-0. But in this game, Evgeni Nabokov, a 41 save shutout. The Islanders outshot 41-32. They get the dub thanks to the very strong goaltending of Evgeni Nabokov. Evgeni Nabokov is our Islanders' birthday of the day. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. There is no offseason. We're bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter most with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everybody who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen. Don't forget, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. If you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we talk about whatever's on your mind, just like we did earlier today. You can follow the show on X at Locked On Isles. You could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR vs NYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long. And it's always great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you anytime. We are back on Friday with a new show. We'll continue our player-by-player preview of the Islanders draft class with Matthew Schaefer, the last of the Islanders picks, the first pick and the last player that we have to give our deep dive scouting report on. We'll have the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings. Maxim Siplikov's arbitration date is set, so hopefully we will hear something as far as a resolution to his contract situation very soon, and we'll have more about that coming up as well. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.